Hey guys, welcome to the CSS Animations crash course. This is a beginner-friendly course, and we're going to look at things like animation with keyframes as well as CSS transitions. Okay, we're also going to build a pretty simple landing page with some entry animations. So if you're brand new to CSS, I suggest watching my CSS for Absolute Beginners video, which I'll link in the description. This is kind of a good next step after watching that video. Basically, there'll be three parts. We're going to start off with learning about keyframes. Now, we're not going to build something that is actually, something you would deploy. We're just going to test some stuff out. You see, we're going to move objects around and change the shape, change the colors, things like that. Then we're going to move on to transitions, which are basically animations that need some kind of trigger, such as a hover. So you'll see when we hover over this, it'll actually change the shape, it'll change the color, and it will rotate. All right, now these are obviously not real projects, it's just to learn. Once we do that, we'll go in, we'll create this landing page where if I reload, you'll see the heading comes down, the paragraph comes in, and then the button fades in, and we have a little transition effect here as well. All right, so that's what we'll be doing in this video, guys. Hopefully you enjoy it, and let's get started. I want to give a huge shout out to today's sponsor, MailTag. MailTag is a Chrome extension that allows you to track your emails in real time for free. It also lets you track other cool things like link clicks, email reopens, and even the device that was used to open your emails. Be sure to check out MailTag by clicking the link in the description below. Alright guys, we're going to go ahead and get started here. I have Visual Studio Code open on the left here and Google Chrome open on the right. I have an empty folder called CSS Animations. Okay, so like I said, we're going to break this up into three parts. We're first going to look at and experiment with CSS keyframes, then we're going to move to transitions, and then we're going to build our little landing page. Alright, so first thing we'll do is create a new file, and I'm going to call this keyframes.html. Okay, so that's our HTML file, and then we're going to create a CSS file to go with it, which I'll call keyframes.css. All right, and we'll just put some standard HTML in there using Emmet. Whoops, this is not the right file. That's CSS. We want to go into HTML and put some basic HTML tags. Let's say keyframes and animation. And all we're going to need here, actually in both the keyframes and the transitions HTML, all we need is one div with the class of box. Everything else is going to be done in CSS. So let's save this. Now I'm going to open this. You can just open the HTML file locally, or you can do what I'm doing and use an extension. I'm using Live Server for VS Code. If you want that, you can just search for it and install it, and that allows you to just right click and say open with Live Server. Alright, so now we have it open over here. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and just close this up. Okay, so now we're going to go to our CSS file. And from here, let's just add a body style. I just want to make the background dark. So I'm going to say background 333, which is a dark gray. And you see, since I'm using Live Server, it's going to auto load. Alright, so let's add the box class, which is the div we added. And from here we want to give it a background, let's say background white. Let's give it a width of, let's say 200 pixels, a height of 200 pixels, and there we go, there's our box. Okay, I also want to position it relative. We're going to be moving it around. Alright. So now we want to start working with the animation. So there's a couple different properties that we're going to be using here. The first is animation-name. Okay, and you can call this whatever you want. I'm just going to call it my animation. All right, and then what we want to do is set a duration for it. So we want to say animation-duration, and I'm going to set this for 4 seconds. So we want to do 4S. Okay, now we want to take this name that we created and we want to create a keyframe. So we're going to go down below here and we're going to say at keyframes, and then we're going to put in my animation. Okay, because that's what we chose to use. Just put a space here. All right, now in here we want to specify different points. All right, so we're going to start at 0%. Okay, so at 0% of this animation, what kind of styles do we want? Let's start with just using a background color. So let's say background color, and it's initially white, so that's what I'm going to use here is white. All right, and then let's go right to 100%. So when it's finished, okay, 100% is going to be when it's finished. We're going to say background, background color, also set to white. Okay, so it's going to start white, it's going to end white. Now, in the process of the animation, within this 4 seconds here, or whatever you define, we want to change the color, okay, to some different colors. So let's say at 25%, we want to set the background color to red. Okay, I'm just going to copy this. So we'll do 25%, I'm going to paste this in 2 more times, we'll do 50%. Okay, so at 50% through, let's change this to green. And then at 75% through, let's set this to blue. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this, and you'll see it goes red, green, blue, white. Okay, so it goes through it, and it's going to do it all in 4 seconds. If I put this to 1 second and save, you'll see it'll go through it in 1 second. If I put 10 seconds, it'll go very slow. Okay, so it's going to fade through those colors. So that's how keyframes work. Pretty simple. Now, obviously, you can do other properties aside from just the color. So what I want to do now is, in addition to changing the colors, I want to move it around a little. All right, so I'm going to set this back to 4 seconds. And in addition to, we'll go to 0%. And in addition to background color, we're going to set the left to 0 pixels. Okay, so basically we want it starting here, 0 from the left, and then we want to go from the top, 0 pixels. Okay, so we basically want it to start where it is now, and then 25% through, we're going to say from the left we want it to go 300 pixels, and from the top we want it to go 0 pixels because we want it to stay at the top. We basically just want to move it over. Alright, now at 50%, we want it to go down, okay, because I want it to go in a square motion. So once it's at 300 pixels left, top 0, we want it to go down 300 pixels and still at left 300 pixels. So let's go ahead and add that. We'll say left 300 pixels and top 300 pixels. Okay. And then from there, we want it to go over back this way, so it'll be 0 left because it's over to the extreme left, but it's still 300 pixels down. So we're going to set this to left. Let's see, it'll be left 0 pixels, and it'll be top 300 pixels. And then the final position is going to be back where it started, which will be 0, 0, okay, left 0, top 0. So let's do that. Top 0 pixels, and let's try it. So we'll go ahead and save it. It'll auto load, goes down, back, and up. All right, so that is our animation. So you can see we animated the color and the position. Now let's do the radius, which will actually make it morph into a circle. Alright, so we're going to add to this, and we're going to say border radius, and we're going to set them all to zeros, so 0, 0, 0, 0, so top right, bottom left. And let's go to the next one here. Okay, so this one we're going to set the top to 50%. And then 0, 0, 0. All right, and then at this point, which is the 50%, we're going to set border radius, and we're going to set it to 50% twice, and then 0, 0. And then here, we'll say border radius, and it's going to be 50%, 3 times and then 0. Put a semicolon there. And then for the last one here, we're going to say border radius, and it's going to be 50% all around. So we'll just go like that. All right, so let's save, and it's going to go, it's just going to morph into a circle as it goes around. All right. Now there's some other properties we can use. So notice how it only went around once and it stopped. So you can actually set the iteration count. So if we go up here and we say animation dash iteration count, and we can set it to whatever we want. Let's set it to 2, and let's save, and it should go around twice. Okay, so it'll stop after 2 times. And then you can also set it to infinite. And I spelled that wrong, didn't I? That should be an I. So infinite, and it'll just keep going. Okay, we can also delay the animation. So if we say animation dash delay, and we set it to 2 seconds, let's save that, and it'll wait 2 seconds and then begin. Okay, we can also set the direction. If we say animation direction, and we can say reverse. So now if we save, it'll delay 2 seconds and then it'll go the other way. So notice that it's now going counterclockwise. All right, and then we can also set this to alternate. So what alternate will do is it'll go one way the first time. I'm actually going to comment the delay out, and then it'll go the other way. Okay, so it's going to go clockwise and then counterclockwise. All right, let's see. Another thing we can do is the timing function. So if we say animation, where is it? Timing function, and we can set it to basically ease in or ease out, change the way that it moves. So if we set it to linear, I'm actually going to comment out the direction here. So let's save that, and now you'll see that linear, it's basically at the same speed all the time. Okay, it starts and stops at the same speed. We can also do like ease in. We'll save that, and now you can see it's easing in. It's basically starting slow and ending fast. And we can go ease out, where it'll start fast and end slow. Okay, it'll ease out. And then we also have ease in and out, which I believe is the default. Okay, it'll basically, you know, start slow and end slow. So it'll ease in and out. All right, and there's other ones as well if you want to check out the documentation at MDN or whatever it is. But I think that's good. Let's go ahead and stop this. I'm just going to say 1 for iteration. It's kind of making me dizzy. Now, if you want it to not reset at the end, you see how it goes into a circle and then it just kind of goes back into a square. If you want it to stay as a circle or whatever type of animation you're doing, then you can do animation, where the heck is it? Animation, I forget exactly what it's called. Fill mode? Yeah, animation fill mode. No, that's not it. Or is it? Yeah, animation fill mode forwards. All right, so if we go ahead and do that, when it gets to the end there, you'll see it'll actually stay as a circle. Okay. Let's see. I think that's pretty much it. If you want to experiment with this, and you know, maybe you want to take away the positioning and just have it morph into a circle or something like that, or use some other properties, maybe the opacity. But you get the point. You can basically just change different properties inside of your keyframe for your animation. All right. Actually, let's try it without the movement. I'm just going to comment this out and copy it, and then we'll just take out the positioning. All right, so we'll go ahead and try that. We'll save, and it'll just morph into a circle, which is pretty cool. Okay, so I'm going to save this, and I'll have the link in the description for you guys so you can download it. Now we're going to work on transitions. Okay, so I'm going to just close this up. I'm going to copy the HTML here, and then we're going to create a new file called transitions.html, and we'll paste that in, and we're just going to change this to the title, the CSS transitions, and we're going to point to a file called transitions.css. Okay, we're going to leave the class of box, and then close that up, create our CSS file, transitions.css, and let's go to transitions.html, and we're just going to get a blank page. So again, I want to make the body dark. I just think it looks a little cooler. So we'll say background 333, and then we're going to take our box class, and we're going to add some stuff here. Let's do the background. We'll say background white, and let's do a width of 300, a height of 300. Oh, I should be putting spaces here. Let's put position relative, and I want to set the margin auto. I want it to go in the middle, and then I'm going to set from the top 200 pixels. Alright, we'll save that. Now we have a white square in the middle. So as I said before, transitions are a little different because they need some kind of trigger. This is usually a hover or an active state, a focus state, something like that. So we're going to work with hover. Alright, so let's go ahead and say box hover. Okay, and then we're going to change some values here. Let's change the background color. We'll say background red. Alright, so even without adding a transition, if I go, whoops, there shouldn't be a space here. If I go and I hover over it, it's going to turn red, but there's no transition, there's no middle point. It's just it's straight white to red. Okay, so transitions allow us to give us some flow to it, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word. But to go, you know, from white to a lighter red to a darker red to a darker red until it gets to the actual red color. Okay, same thing with some of the other properties, and I'm actually going to paste in here just all of the different properties that you can use with transitions. Okay, basically they have to be properties that have an identifiable halfway point, so it can't be just like, for instance, display. It's either none or block. There's no in between. Okay, if you want to do some kind of fade, then you can use the opacity. Okay, but you're not going to use display. So let me just paste these in, just so you guys have it. You know, color, positioning, the width, spacing, font size. All of this stuff has some kind of midpoint. It's not just one or the other. All right, so you can use any of these in a transition. So let's go ahead and add to our box class here. We're going to say transition property. So we want to define what property we want to actually add to this transition, and it's going to be the background. Okay. We also want to set a duration. So I'm going to say transition duration, and we'll set that to, let's say, 3 seconds. Okay, and then I'm going to save that, and then when I hover over it, you'll see that it fades into the red. Instead of just going white to red automatically, it fades in and then fades out when I leave the hover state. All right, and it doesn't have to be hover. Active, we can use active, which is when we click on it. So if I keep clicking, you'll see that it'll get darker and darker. Alright, and then if I stop clicking, it'll go back, but I'm just going to keep it at hover. Okay, and I'm going to change it to 1 second, actually. It's a little too slow. Alright, so that's the background. Now we can add other properties as well. So let's do the border radius. So I'm going to put a comma here saying we also want to transition the border radius. So border radius, and then down here in the box hover, we're going to say border radius, and we're going to set this to 50%. Alright, so let's go ahead and hover over it, and now you'll see it'll morph into a circle and back, which looks kind of cool. Alright, now we can set things here like delay. We can set the transition delay. Let's say we want to delay it 2 seconds. So now, whoops, what did I do? Alright, so it actually fades in as well. But if I hover over it, it'll wait 2 seconds and then it'll go. Okay. You can also change the timing function for transitions, just like we did with the animations. So transition timing function, and we can say linear. There's a bunch of them. But you can see that the it also delays going back. But you can see the movement's a little different. We can do like ease in and ease out. Let's do ease in. I'm going to take the delay off actually. Alright, so kind of eases in. You see how it starts slow and then it ends up going fast. So, I mean, there's a lot of different timing functions. You can look that stuff up if you want to check the different ones out. But yeah, so that's transitions. Now, if you wanted to set, for instance, a duration to be different for the background and then for the border radius, we could add a comma here. This would be for the background, and then the border radius will say 3 seconds. Okay, so we can separate the duration for the different animations. So you'll see in 1 second it'll go to red, and it'll take 3 seconds to actually make the circle. And you can do the same thing with the delay. If you want to delay the border radius 4 seconds, you could do that, and the background would only delay 2 seconds. Okay. So let's do a rotate, or a transform rather. So we're going to add up here, we're going to say transform, and down here we'll say transform, and we're going to say we want this, whoops, we want this to rotate Y, and let's rotate it 180 degrees. So we'll save that, and I'll go and hover over it, and it'll do the little rotate, which is cool. Now, if you don't want to separate, like if you don't want different durations or delays and stuff, if we want just 1 second for everything like that, then we don't have to specify all of these properties. We can actually, you know what I'm going to do though is just comment this out so you guys have it. But we can just do all. So we can go like that and save, and you'll see that it'll all just work together. Okay, it'll animate all of these, and it'll all have the same duration and stuff. Okay, so I would encourage you guys to just experiment with this. You know, these types of videos where we're not building an actual project, this is for learning purposes and for you to you know, try to get your own ideas and create some cool stuff, you know, and do a little more research. You know, this is just a kind of a beginner type crash course. There's a lot that you can do. All right, so that's it for transitions. Now we're going to build our little landing page. So I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this landing.html. And let's create another file called landing.css. Okay, so the HTML, we're going to put in our standard tags here. Title, we'll just say landing page, and we're going to link a style sheet, and it's going to be landing.css. Alright, now for the markup, well, it's not going to be too difficult. We're just going to put in a header, and we're going to give this an ID of showcase. And inside here, we're just going to have an H1, and we're going to say welcome to my site. Under the header, we're going to have a div with an ID of content, and then I'm going to give it a class of container as well. Okay, and then I'm just going to say lorem 50 tab, which if you're using Emmet like I am, it'll just give you 50 words of dummy text. Okay, and then we're going to put in an A tag, and we're going to give this a class of BTN. All right, that's not really going to go anywhere. And for the text, we'll just say read more. All right, so now we'll go to landing.html, and it should look like this. So let's go to our landing CSS, and we're going to add some styles here. I want to zero out the margin and padding for everything, so I'm just going to use a reset by putting an asterisk here and saying margin 0 and padding 0. Okay, and then for the body, let's see, for the body we're going to add, well, we don't need margin 0. Let's do font family. So for font family, I'm just going to say Arial, Helvetica, Sans Serif. We're going to set the background color. Let's set that to a hexadecimal value of 12475F, which is a bluish color. So we'll save that. Let's set the color of the text to white. And let's set the line height to 1.6, and we're going to set text align to center. I want the whole site centered. All right, so there we go. Now we're going to do the container. Okay, so the paragraph has a container class, and I'm just going to set a max width of 960 pixels, and we're going to set the margin to auto so it's pushed to the middle, and then we're just going to add some padding. I'm going to put 30 pixels on the left and right. All right, so we'll save that. Let's see what else. So now for the showcase, which is the header. Okay, so for the showcase, all I want to do is set a height. I can't spell, H-E-I-G-H-T. Height is going to be 300 pixels, and save. All right, so now we have our showcase with the height. Now we're going to work with the H1, which is in the showcase. So showcase H1, and in here, let's set the font size to 50 pixels. I'm going to just set the line height. I cannot spell height today for some reason. To 1.3. Yeah, let's do 1.3. Save that. And we're going to set the position to relative. Alright, so now we want to start our animation. So we're going to be using keyframes. Basically what I want to do is I want this to come in from the top and just slide down. Okay, slide down to this area here. So we're going to say animation, and this is going to be pretty easy. It's going to be easier than the stuff that we just did. We'll call this heading. Okay, and then we're going to go right under the showcase H1 and create a keyframe. So we'll say keyframes heading, and we're just going to have 2 points. We're going to have 0% and we're going to have 100%. All right, I know we had a lot more the last time, but we only need 2 points when it starts and when it ends here. So we wanted to start above the fold right here where it's kind of like out of sight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set top to -50 pixels. Okay, and then when it's at 100%, I want it to move down 200 pixels. So we'll say top 200 pixels. Whoops. All right, so let's save that. Now it's not going to work yet because we need a duration, so we're going to go up and say animation duration, and let's make this 3 seconds. All right, so if we save that, it's going to come down and it's going to go back to its original state. Okay, now remember, we have a property for that called animation fill mode, and we want to set that to forwards. So let's say animation fill mode forwards, save, and now it's going to come down and it's going to stay in its place. All right, so that's the first animation. The next one we want to do is the content. We want this to come in from the left So let's go down here and let's say ID content, and we're going to set the position to relative, and let's set animation name. We'll set it to content. Set the duration to, we'll set it to the same thing, 3 seconds. And you guys can experiment with this. And then we want it to stay, so we're going to do the fill mode of forwards. Okay, and then we'll create our keyframe. What I'm going to do is just copy this. And this is going to be keyframe content. And except this time we're not coming from the top, we're coming from the left. And we need it to be way over here, and it's quite wide. So what I'm going to do is set this to -1000 pixels. Okay, and then for the 100%, we're going to set the left to 0, like that. All right, let's put our semicolons in here. So let's save that. So that comes down, that comes in, and that's good. All right, so now we want to do the button. So that has a class of btn, and let's say this we want to display as an inline block. Okay, we want it to go on the next line like a block, but we don't want it to go all the way across, so we want it as inline block. All right, we'll set the color of the text and the button to white. Let's do text decoration none, because we don't want the underline. Let's give it a padding of 1 rem on the top and bottom, 2 rem on the sides. What else? We're going to give it a border of white, 1 pixels, and solid. All right, and then let's give it a margin top, move it down a little bit, of 40 pixels, and save. Okay. So right now, you know, it's just going to be there when the site loads, and that's not what we want. So let's set the opacity to 0, and that's going to make it invisible, so we can't see it at all. All right, and then what we want to do is add our animation. So we'll say animation name is going to be btn. We'll set the duration. So duration, we're going to set it to 3 seconds. Now, I don't want this to fade in while these are coming down. I want it to be afterwards. So we know that the duration of these two are 3 seconds. So let's set the delay to 3 seconds, because that's when we want this to start. All right, so we'll set that to 3 seconds. We also want to set the fill mode to forwards. And let's see, yeah, we'll do that. And then down here, we want to set our keyframes. I'm going to copy this. This is going to be btn. And instead of doing positioning for these, what we're doing is opacity. All right, so 0%, we're starting at 0 opacity, so completely transparent. And then by the end, by 100%, we want it to be 1, which is obviously in full view. All right, so let's go ahead and save. It's going to animate those two, 3 seconds, and then that button comes in. All right, so that's exactly what we want. And then just to add that little transition, that little flip, we can say transition dash property, and we're going to set it to transform. And let's set transition dash duration to 1 second. And then we're just going to add a hover state. So btn hover. And let's set the transform to rotate y 180 degrees. All right, let's try it. So we'll save. We have our initial animation, button comes in. If we hover over it, we get the little flip effect. All right, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this and you learned a little something. And again, I'd encourage you to explore and experiment for yourself with some of these animations. And this is just a basic introduction. And yeah, you may want to look at some blog posts or some articles that have to do with CSS animation if it's something you're interested in. I know I've done videos on some libraries like animate.css, and that stuff makes this easier. I think we actually did something similar to this with Animate CSS, but this shows you how to do it with just core CSS, not having to use a library. So hopefully you can appreciate that. But thanks for watching. If you liked it, please leave a like. If you're not subscribed and you like these types of videos, please subscribe, and I will see you next time. So I just want to give another shout out to MailTag, who sponsored this video. MailTag is a free Chrome browser extension that allows you to track your emails in real time. I've been using it myself for about a week now, and I can't recommend it enough. On top of email tracking, MailTag has a bunch of other features like desktop push notifications that alert you when your emails have been opened, link click tracking that shows if people have actually clicked on the links in your email, and a ton of other cool features. Again, all these features are completely free. Be sure to check out MailTag and click that link in the description.